From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The Venezuelan Prime Minister has held a news conference at the United Nations in New York. He asked the UN to work towards ending the United States-led economic and financial blockade against Venezuela. The foreign minister also criticized the US for openly leading a coup d'etat in Venezuela and pointed to other examples of US imperialism in recent years.
We have requested the United Nations of the world to promote the end blocking of Venezuela, to withdraw all sanctions, to be able to access our $30 billion, our assets abroad, our gold that was also taken away by the Bank of England. We are asking for what belongs to the people. Nothing more, nothing less. And those resources will be used to produce what we need in Venezuela. We have mentioned, and President Maduro has denounced this openly, that the process of the coup d'etat in Venezuela, first time in history of Latin America, a coup d'etat has been led, that has been openly led by the government of the United States and its spokespeople. It's not like in the past, where they were there, they were sponsoring and financing such coup, they were moving all the pieces.
Arreaza also questions the motives behind offers of alleged humanitarian aid. The foreign minister said that the United States is breaking international law by imposing unilateral sanctions on Venezuela. He said the opposition in Venezuela is receiving orders from the White House. Arreaza continued to call for dialogue.
Are you really going to believe that the government threatening you with the use of force, that's threatening with an invasion, that's blocking you, that orders the rest of the countries to block you, is willing to provide humanitarian support? Come on, come on. It's absolutely absurd for someone to believe in this. It's a hostile government that first is trying to kill you and then they want to give you a cookie. Come on, let's be coherent. And hopefully there will be a process of independence from the opposition of Venezuela, specifically from this extremist sector that just calls on the phone and they get orders. The first step is, of course, Marco Rubio, then Bolton, then Pompeo, then Pence, and then finally Trump. They hold meetings in the White House. And you're going to be represented by a person who had already all the elements, who has the status of refugee by the Colombian government, a person where we have the confessions, the elements, the test that was behind the attempted murder, not only against President Maduro, which would have been terrible, but also the rest of the public governments that took place in Venezuela. This opposition wants violence, wants a civil war, and wants a coup. We call for them because they're brothers and sisters. All of them. Congressman Guaido, they're our brothers, our compatriots. Let's sit down and speak. There's a mechanism that has been created there. It's called the Montevideo mechanism, with a very clear methodology, with neutral countries that care about Venezuela. Let's speak with them.
Young Chavistas have marked National Youth Day in Venezuela with a march in Caracas in defense of democracy. Beginning at Plaza Morelos, the event marked 205 years since the Battle of La Victoria in the Venezuelan War of Independence. Ahead of the battle, fought in 1814, the Republican defenders of La Victoria had to arm students before an attack on the city by the Royalist Spanish Empire. The Republicans won the day. Each February 12th is celebrated as Youth Day in honor of the young students who fought in the battle. For more on this, we head to Caracas, where our correspondent Luis Tavera was present at the march.
This is the emblematic plaza, which today is filled with patriotic and Chavista youth. And what stands out today is that things like free education, inclusion in public health, and student scholarships are achievements only made possible under the revolution. Compared with other countries, they say that Venezuela will not allow anything to happen to their natural resources, nor these social missions, which have enfranchised young people. They say that this was made possible only with the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez. This march will depart from the Bellas Artes in the center of the capital and will march to the emblematic Plaza Bolivar, where these youth and other working-class citizens will be greeted by President Nicolas Maduro. Today, all are united around one slogan: no to imperialism, no to intervention, and yes to peace.
First of all, we are the cradle of American freedom. We are the sons and daughters of Bolivar. We're here like the new and old pines that Jose Marti spoke of. We're here on a patriotic and revolutionary offensive. We've been a land in resistance for 526 years. We're not going to change. They want our gold, our oil. That's why they're offering humanitarian aid. But we know that today, capitalism is in crisis. We know that they need our energy. We know that they need our resources. We know that they need the business of war. But here in Venezuela, they're going to fail. Here, in the land of Bolivar, they're not going to succeed. We won't allow it.
5 years have passed since far-right groups in Venezuela staged numerous violent protests causing widespread damage. Let's see what these guarimbas caused back in 2014.
Between February and June of 2014, 43 people died due to opposition-led violence in the streets. 33 were civilians, whilst 10 formed part of various Bolivarian security forces. 857 injured were reported during the same period, 600 civilian and 278 members of the security forces. There were 3,351 people arrested, out of which 436 were freed, 1,402 were prosecuted, and, up until 2015, only 41 remained in prison, according to the prosecutor's office. Opposition-led vandalism ended up causing $10 billion in damages to public property. Around 50 public transportation units were damaged, as well as health centres, public institutions and schools. There were also attacks against the country's electricity grid, amounting to $35 billion in damages to the system.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that Moscow's United Nations Security Council resolution on Venezuela is aimed at a political settlement. At the same time, he says that the United States had attempted to push its own resolution, which hides its aggressive interventionist plans. According to the minister, the U.S. Department of State also asked to organize a phone call with Mike Pompeo. He added that the Russian government will soon meet with the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs to seek support for dialogue in Venezuela.
This is a lie. This is an attempt to distract attention from the fact that the U.S. draft resolution on Venezuela proposed to the UN Security Council aims to present planned provocations through humanitarian aid delivery as an instrument for destabilization in Venezuela or an excuse for direct military intervention. As you can understand, the Security Council will never make such a decision.
In Colombia, a number of political sectors and social organizations are demanding that President Iván Duque refrain from involvement in any type of military intervention in Venezuela. According to a 16-page letter addressed to Duque, a meeting is set for February 13th between the Colombian president and U.S. President Donald Trump. The letter outlines the ways in which the government of Colombia has acted in a manner which has serious implications. The rejection includes the use of Colombian territory by the U.S. military for war operations on the neighboring country. Endorsers include lawmakers, academics, well-known personalities, unions, and communities. And the Colombian president has visited the area surrounding the Ituango Dam, a controversial hydroelectric project that has caused many environmental issues that have affected the nearby communities. Our correspondent in Colombia, Tatiana Portela, has more.
On Monday, Colombian President Iván Duque took an aerial survey of the Ituango Dam and visited some of the nearest communities. Duque said he is committed with the affected communities who are asking for the complete dismantling of the dam. This is in contradiction to what he said to the company behind the hydroelectric project. Duque told them that there is no humanitarian crisis in the area and he fully supports the construction of the Ituango Dam. Since the construction of the dam started, people who oppose to it have been persecuted, threatened, and some social leaders have even been killed. The Attorney General has opened an investigation into executives from the company's EPM Medellin, as well as governors and the former presidential candidate Sergio Fajardo. Fajardo was governor of the department of Antioquia, where the Ituango Dam is located. Although the National Authority for Environmental Licenses rejected the project and released a report to stop its construction, the Ituango Dam continues to be built. So the investigations are looking to clarify whether authorities who ordered the construction of the dam omitted information that said it should not have been built.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Jamaica has begun the legislative process towards acquiring Venezuela 49% shares in Petrojam. Those shares are held by Venezuela's state-owned oil and gas company, Petróleos de Venezuela Caribe.
This afternoon, Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, will table a bill to compulsorily acquire 49% shareholding in Petrojam Limited, which was sold to PDB Caribe by DCJ in 2007. The bill will not be debated today, but as you know, bills must be passed in two houses and this takes time.
The first of 15 consultations on a draft gender equality strategy for the Caribbean community has kicked off in Antigua. Priority areas include equality and social inclusion, freedom from violence, access to health services and education, good governance, and economic empowerment. Delegates will also give recommendations to advance on gender equality. The IMF's Deputy Managing Director has met with Dominica's Prime Minister to discuss the country's economic growth and development. The IMF official also visited hurricane-affected areas on the island. In 2017, Dominica was devastated by Hurricane Maria, which cost billions of dollars in damage. Both parties also discussed how the IMF will partner with Caribbean countries to find ways to avoid the failure of correspondent banking relationships. A coup has been averted in Chad after a joint operation by the military and the French Air Force repelled the rebels. Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said on Tuesday that French jets destroyed dozens of pickup trucks. The Chadian army confirmed it had captured more than 250 rebels from the Union of Forces of Resistance, a Libya-based rebel coalition.
There was an attack by a rebel group which came from the unstable region of southern Libya that wanted to take power in Yamena through military force. And President Idris Deby asked us in writing to intervene to stop this coup d'etat which came from southern Libya. This is in total compliance with international law, and the Prime Minister informed the President of the Senate and the National Assembly. I will myself appear in front of the Foreign Affairs Commission tomorrow to talk about it, if asked.
The incoming African Union chair, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, has vowed to strengthen African economic development and create more job opportunities. After assuming the AU chairmanship during the 32nd ordinary session of the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa on Monday, al-Sisi vowed to strengthen the basis of sustainable development in order to provide more job opportunities. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has slammed the state power company following the latest round of power outages across the country. Johannesburg and other major cities were plunged into darkness for hours Monday after the power company switched off power. The company said it was caused by a mechanical failure at 6 of its generating units.
We've got to address this because ESCOM is a risk. We've got all our energy eggs in one basket. When the generator of energy in our country reports that there are 6 units, it means that all 6 eggs are broken, and possibly we just have maybe a dozen eggs, and it should not be like that. And that is why we are saying we now need to have a new business model for ESCOM, where we're able to minimize the risk, minimize our risk as a nation, like other countries have done.
As a new government in the Democratic Republic of Congo takes office for the first time since presidential elections, farmers hope that their grievances can be finally resolved. Our correspondent in Kinshasa, Oscar Epildi, brings us more about the plight of these communities.
Elders from Baoba still remember what the whites and the government promised back in the 60s in exchange for their lands. They wanted to build the Inga hydroelectric dam. They were promised homes, a school and a hospital that would have improved their quality of life, as well as access to electricity and tractors. But these proved to be empty promises. To this day, they don't even have a light bulb.
People are suffering. First of all, we need them to deliver everything they promised. We gave up our lands because of what they promised, so they owe us. If they were good people, they would pay us back. Our ancestors are gone, but we are still suffering from their abuse.
Those who work for foreign construction companies didn't receive any benefits either, like Mwanda Mwaka, who tells us there's been no positive change in her village.
Finding food is hard, finding water and medicine as well. We have not seen any improvements in all these years.
When they came to build the second channel, they didn't even respect Congolese workers. They never had them sign a work contract.
They paid us 150,000 Congolese francs a month.
You benefit from my labor, but ignore I have a whole family to feed. We are not against anyone in particular. We just want our dignity back. Don't use me. Make me sign a contract.
They continue to demand that the government lives up to its responsibilities.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands have rallied outside the White House in the U.S. to demand that the temporary protection status of hundreds of thousands of migrants not be revoked. Protesters later continued to march through Washington, D.C. They have also demanded that migrants' TPS status be made permanent. Hundreds of thousands of migrants live under the temporary protection status, which allows them to live and work in the U.S. for a period of time.
We need to make sure that we as a nation honor our promises. And that is what this is all about. We, from Nepal to Honduras, we have made a promise to say that the United States will be a safe haven. We will be that lantern on the shore.
Our correspondent in Washington, Alina Duarte, has more.
We are in front of the White House, where hundreds of people have gathered to demand that the U.S. government does not suspend temporary protection status that protects more than 300,000 migrants, mostly from El Salvador, Haiti, and Honduras. On Tuesday, people will march to several institutions, including Congress, to demand the government guarantees temporary protection status, which is at risk. They also demand that migrants who have been living here for more than 2 decades be given citizenship.
We thank Alina for that report. Mexican drug trafficker Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán has been found guilty and faces life imprisonment. A U.S. court found him guilty of all 10 charges related to drug trafficking. He was accused of manufacturing and distributing heroin and marijuana and ordering killings. He was arrested in 2016 after escaping a Mexican prison and was extradited to the U.S. for a trial in 2017.
Minutes ago, a federal jury here in the Eastern District convicted Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán Loera on all counts of the federal indictment. In sum, the jury found that Guzmán led the Sinaloa cartel, one of the largest and most dangerous drug cartels in the world, and that he is responsible for violence, including murders, and the smuggling of massive amounts of narcotics into the United States over a period of decades.
7 people have been injured following a car bomb explosion at a Syrian checkpoint on the Kilis border with Turkey. 3 police officers were reportedly wounded in the attack. The explosion was captured on CCTV at the Turkish side of the border. Turkey has made a series of arrests in its biggest crackdown on the Gulen movement. Here's more on that and other stories from around the world.
Over 1,000 arrest warrants have been issued in Turkey for people with alleged links to US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen, who's accused of plotting the failed coup in 2016. Suspects were arrested in the city of Adana in one of the largest state crackdowns. Following the failed coup, 77,000 people were arrested and 130,000 lost their government jobs. Hundreds of farmers have protested against the olive crisis and falling prices of milk in front of Parliament in Rome. Since 2013, thousands of olive trees have been cut down in the southern region of Puglia to contain a bacterial outbreak. Demonstrators have called on the government to save trees and stop the controversial measures. They also decline in the price of sheep milk, which according to reports has dropped 25%.
Is it possible that we have to pay 70 cents to produce 1 liter of milk when the cheese industry keep paying us for the same milk 54 to 60 cents for the same milk, including taxes? This is absurd. It just cannot go on like this any longer. We want no more charity from the state. We want those who are really responsible for this situation, cheese companies and consortiums, to go home.
The UN envoy to Yemen has arrived in the capital Sana'a amid reports of humanitarian crisis. Food aid in a warehouse on the front lines of Yemen's war was reported to be at risk of rotting, leaving millions of Yemenis without access to life-saving sustenance. Humanitarian organizations are concerned about the lack of access to the area due to the war.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.